My name is Vanessa, a 40-year-old housewife who usually works part-time at a local supermarket. I live in an apartment with my husband Brian, who is the same age as me, and my daughter Emma, who is in the 4th grade of elementary school. My husband and I have been married for 12 years. To put it bluntly, my married life has been a whirlwind. I originally worked at the same company as my husband, but resigned when we got married. I want you to stay home after we get married, he strongly requested. I didn't have a strong attachment to my job, so I agreed by saying, okay. Brian advanced in his career faster than his peers despite his age, and he earned more than them. We wouldn't be financially troubled even if I don't work. Both our parents approved of our marriage, and I got along well with my in-laws. Although my in-laws were serious and strict, they never treated me unfairly. Especially, there were no issues with my mother-in-law or other relatives for that matter. From the outside, my married life might have seemed very happy. But that was a veil hiding the truth. I had a significant problem. The reason was Cindy, my sister-in-law. She is Brian's sister, 10 years younger than him, and she has been hostile towards me from the beginning of our marriage. It wasn't an exaggeration to say that Brian doted on his younger sister, whom he adored. When we visited his parents' house for marriage greetings, his parents welcomed us and said, "Thank you for coming. Please take care of our unsophisticated son." But Cindy ignored me even when I jokingly said, "Please take care of me from now on." Brian didn't scold her for such behavior, laughing it off by saying, "Maybe she's jealous because you're taking me away." His parents said, "At least respond to the greeting properly." But she completely ignored them. At that time, I thought she was just angry because a stranger had taken her beloved brother away from her, and maybe she would come around and get along with me after a while. But that day never came. She picked fights with me whenever she could. She would barge in on weekends and stay from morning till night, finding fault with everything I did. If I served coffee and sweets, she would complain. "I hate coffee." If I then prepared tea or juice, she would say, "I don't like this brand." I felt awkward about her random visits, but for her it was a routine to come over while I was doing household chores, like cleaning and laundry, and criticize the way I did them. If I was doing laundry, she'd say, "I hate the smell of this fabric softener." While cleaning, she would wipe dust with her finger and say, "You missed a spot here," in a nagging tone. It would have been better if she only stayed for a short time in the morning. But she always stayed for dinner, drank with Brian, and left late at night. Frankly, there was no such thing as private time for us as a couple. I've asked Brian several times if Cindy could visit less often, but he dismissed it by asking, "Is there a problem with my sister coming over?" Wondering if he was unaware of my troubles, I explained. "When Cindy comes over, I can't get my household chores done, and it's troublesome when she stays late. We can't even have time together." However, Brian replied with something nonsensical. "We can always make time for us as a couple. Or are you jealous of the bond between my sister and me?" After several years of this lifestyle, Cindy got married. My in-laws were relieved as if a weight had been lifted off their shoulders. I thought this would mean she'd stop coming to our house. Honestly, dealing with her was the main source of stress for me as a busy mother. As expected, her visits decreased after her marriage. About half a year into her marriage, she got pregnant. She seemed to be in poor health during her pregnancy and stayed with her parents, not visiting us. I thought we would become distant from her once the child was born, considering the busyness of parenting. However, she ended up divorcing shortly after giving birth and returned to her parents' house. The reason for her divorce, as told by Brian, was a mismatch of personalities. Frankly, her personality can only be described as brazen and selfish. The man who couldn't indulge Cindy's cute whims is to blame. Cindy was defending herself by saying, "I thought he would cherish me like my brother does, but after we got married, it became all about what I should and shouldn't do, which I found annoying." She was justifying herself. However, it seemed like her parents did not take her divorce well, saying, Not long after Cindy moved back to her parents' house, my mother-in-law, who rarely calls, called me, saying, she doesn't understand that the divorce was her fault. It's truly shameful, and vented to me. Think about why you got divorced. Think about it seriously. And it wasn't long before Cindy began visiting our house again. After moving back to her parents' house, she started working after dropping off her son Max at daycare. The rule in this house is, if you're going to stay, you must work. Otherwise, you cannot stay here. Her parents had apparently told her. Why do I have to work? Brian and she complained to their parents. Isn't it cruel to make Cindy work right away when she's just been through a divorce and is hurting? When she began working, Cindy forced me to take Max to and from daycare and to pick him up when he was sick because the daycare was on the way to my part-time job at the supermarket. Please take care of Max again today. This is rather difficult, Cindy. I'm busy too, and as his mother, you should be the one dropping and picking him up. I'm busy with work. Don't compare me to you, who has it easy working part-time. How many times have we had this exchange in the morning rush at the doorstep? Then, Brian would come out and say, just take him already. Cindy is having a hard time, isn't she? And I would end up taking care of Max. Since the daycare was in the opposite direction of his company, Brian couldn't do the drop-off and pick-up, so it ended up being my daily responsibility. To make matters worse, Cindy had registered my mobile phone number and work number as emergency contacts at the daycare, so I was the one they called if anything happened. Max has a fever, please come and pick him up. They would say, and I had to apologize to my colleagues and leave early numerous times. Fortunately, many of my colleagues had parenting experience and understood that kids get sick often, and they accepted my leave graciously. Yet, even when I contacted Cindy, she would not respond, claiming she was busy at work. Cindy would only say, you take care of it. But it's not like she had no interest in Max. I'm practicing non-punitive parenting. She claimed, adoring him instead. When Max misbehaved and I said, you shouldn't do that, she would snap at me, saying, hey, what are you doing to Max? I told you I'm practicing non-punitive parenting. And refused to scold him for anything. Feeling that this was not right, I consulted Brian. Knowing she wouldn't listen to me, I hoped Brian would talk to her. Brian, Max's mischief is getting out of hand. Even if she is practicing non-punitive parenting, isn't this going too far? What's wrong with non-punitive parenting? I support it. If we keep scolding him, he'll become timid and won't grow up freely. Brian dismissed my concerns. As a result, by the time Max was ready for kindergarten, he had become quite a handful. If something didn't go his way, he would cry and scream. He would lie on the floor, kicking his legs and arms, to assert himself. Even seeing this, Cindy would interpret it positively, saying, my child is sensitive and honest. Brian would also miss the point, saying, he's a boy, it's good that he's energetic. Leaving me utterly dismayed. Honestly, I had considered divorce, but Brian was a good provider for the family and didn't go out much. The only downside was his nonsensical talk when it came to Cindy, but I thought, he's still Emma's father. And time just passed. But an incident finally pushed me to my limit. One day, Cindy came to our house crying. Dad and Mom told me to leave the house. What? Why would Dad and Mom say such a terrible thing to my little Cindy? Brian was shocked by her words. But there was a reason Cindy was asked to leave. Sometimes, I would hear complaints from my mother-in-law because Cindy was too comfortable having her parents around who held her accountable to her daily tasks and work. She struggled to do it herself when she was away from her parents. However, due to her selfish nature, she kept causing trouble at work, quitting, and then finding new jobs repeatedly. 3 months ago, she caused trouble at work again and quit. Before then, she would find a new job within about 2 weeks, but this time, she hadn't even started job hunting, saying she was a bit tired. It was clear that her parents were running out of patience with her lack of effort. Brian, what should I do? I'll be in trouble if they kick me out. Well, let me talk to Mom and Dad. Just wait a bit. Brian did talk to his parents, but their decision was final. Really, why won't Mom and Dad help Cindy when she's in trouble? Brian vented his frustrations about his parents to me when he got home. Well, it's because she shows no signs of wanting to look for a job when she needs one. When I said that, he replied, "You're so cold. It seems I'm the only one on Cindy's side." And sighed deeply. Then, he did something unbelievable. A few days later, when I returned home from my part-time job, there were lots of cardboard boxes at our home. Wondering what they were, I hurriedly checked the labels and saw they were in Cindy's name. To my disbelief, Brian came back with Cindy and her son, Max. "What's all this? Whose are these boxes?" To my question, Brian proudly declared, "From today, we're taking care of these two. We're going to support them completely. We've cut ties with the parents." I thought I was going to black out. The idea of living together with Cindy and Max was unthinkable, and I felt a strong refusal bubbling up inside me. As I remained silent, Brian added, "Cindy's really hurt because she's been kicked out of the house. Just take good care of her, okay? Thanks for having us. I'd like pizza for dinner today as a moving-in celebration. Please order some. I definitely want pepperoni if it's pizza." "Oh, Max wants pepperoni. Did you hear that? Make sure to get pepperoni because my child wants it. Come on, place the order. Cindy's asking for it." Stunned by Brian's words, I snapped back to reality and blurted out, "Okay, let's get a divorce then." "Huh? Divorce?" Brian was taken aback by my statement. "If living with Cindy is the plan, I'd rather divorce you right now." After I firmly stated this, Brian got angry and yelled, "I've always thought you didn't care about Cindy. I don't need a wife who can't cherish my sister. Get out." I realized then that Brian valued his sister more than us. "Fine, I don't care about Cindy. I'll take Emma and leave. Do whatever you want." He then went inside with Cindy and her son. As we passed by, I heard Cindy giggling. Poor thing, getting kicked out by her own brother. I quickly packed up and left with my daughter. Emma looked puzzled but followed me after seeing the situation with Brian and Cindy. Fortunately, my parents' house was just one train stop away, so we could return home quickly. My parents were shocked by our sudden arrival but became furious after hearing the story and advised me to divorce Brian. When I asked Emma, "Is it okay if we divorce Daddy?" she replied, "Yes, I like you more than Daddy." And surprisingly, she agreed quite easily. Eventually, we divorced through a lawyer. Brian paid the agreed-upon amount for compensation and child support in a lump sum, avoiding any direct contact, likely not wanting to see my face again. Once, my in-laws came to apologize for their children's terrible behavior. Seeing my elderly in-laws apologizing profusely was heart-wrenching, and I couldn't help but feel sorry for them. About 3 months after returning to my parents' home, my ex-husband suddenly reached out to me. "What do you want now?" When I spoke coldly, he pleaded with me in almost tears. "Please, come back to me, let's get back together." I retorted, "No. You should be happy with your beloved Cindy. Don't say that. I'm sick of Cindy now." Despite his previous adoration for Cindy, I wasn't surprised. Cindy still isn't looking for a job, and she doesn't do anything around the house. Well, it's not that she doesn't do it, she can't. And she keeps asking for this and that. Yes, she's always been brazen. I heard from my mother-in-law that Cindy couldn't do any household chores. Apparently, when she was young and her mother tried to teach her, Brian would intervene, saying, "Don't make Cindy do such things." Cindy grew up without learning any household skills, which led to her not doing any housework even after marriage. This lack of effort definitely contributed to her husband growing tired of her, a story I heard from my in-laws. Of course, Cindy never mentioned any of this to Brian. Cindy always had a habit of demanding things. She would pester me endlessly for clothes and handbags she liked. I felt no sympathy for Brian. He was merely experiencing the boundless whims which I had endured. All along, Brian deemed Cindy's whims cute because it was always others who bore the brunt of her demands. I've been putting up with Cindy's whims all along. I feel bad about that. So, won't you come back home? If you say you'll kick Cindy out, I might consider it. But Brian still defended Cindy. Why should Cindy have to leave? That would be cruel. I felt there was no hope. You always put Cindy first. If I returned, I'd just end up dealing with her whims again, reducing your burden. No one said that. It's the same thing. As long as Cindy is there, my burden won't lessen. I've been complaining about her whims causing trouble, but you ignored it. Well, that's. You've made your bed, now lie in it. It's no longer my concern. Wait. No. If you keep pestering me, I'll have a lawyer issue a restraining order. But. I hung up, cutting him off. He was just as self-centered as Cindy. Feeling any residual love faded, I decided to ensure Brian couldn't contact me again by reaching out to my in-laws and a lawyer. Since then, I have maintained a good relationship with my in-laws, who are wonderful grandparents to my daughter. I learned that Cindy was forced to work after being caught fraudulently claiming single mother benefits and now had to repay the money. Cindy's work stress led to constant arguments with Brian. Brian unsuccessfully tried to reconcile with his parents, but they reminded him. You were the one who wanted to cut ties. Brian tried to reconcile with me a few times, but I ignored him. Recently, I got a promotion interview at the supermarket where I worked, moving from part-time to full-time employment. With a better salary and benefits, my daughter and I began saving for our own place. We plan to move out soon, ready to face the future together, just the two of us.